Hello everyone, I am Saad. So I will be talking about how our company will be operating. First of all, we're gonna make sure to put some boxes around the campus so that it's easier for our customers to put their uh, plastic bottles and cans. And then we're going to process by collecting all those bottles and cans. And we have actually created an application for our company, which is a Trash Lucky, which will make you give you the chance to gather points as much as you give more bottles and more cans by scanning our code. And the better you give bottles, the more are your chances to win a gift or to win a smartphone. So this is basically how we're intending to process our company and operating. I hope you enjoy our video. Thank you.
Hello, Gohan here. I'm going to talk about our company called Trash Lucky. So basically what this company do is encouraging people to recycle more by giving them products in return, depending on how many points they've got by recycling. That was a short introduction of the company's process and work, so thank you very much for listening. So the more you recycle, the more points you get, and the more better products you get in return. Later, this trash or whatever you call it is stocked up and resold to companies in Europe, which makes them into products again, like bottles, clothing, and etc.
Have the activity for the raffle. Five of cats can get the one voucher. For what? For the prize, the raffle prize. Like the snacks, book notes, and the top prize. It can't imagine.
So maybe an iPhone?
Yeah, new iPhone.
Really?
Yeah, of course.
Oh, I will also want to join.
Yeah, everyone can join. Just a five cans can get one voucher.
Okay, maybe you can tell me more information?
Okay.
Recycling just makes you feel good. But what actually happens to all the plastic bottles? This does not happen. Bottles do not magically become fresh new bottles. The story is actually much more interesting. We're going to focus on polyethylene terephthalate, or PET, the type of plastic with a 1 printed on the bottom. The ethylene terephthalate refers to this. String a bunch of these together and you get polyethylene terephthalate, a durable, flexible plastic that can be heated up and molded into lots of convenient shapes. After you recycle a plastic bottle, it gets hauled off and sent to a recycling plant. They take off the labels and clean it and separate all of the PET bottles, not just from the glass and metal and paper, but also from the other kinds of plastic. That's because different types of polymers do not always play well together. For example, polyvinyl chloride, which most of the pipes in your home are probably made of, can totally ruin a batch of PET. You have to heat up a batch of PET so much just to soften and mold it that the PVC will start to chemically break down and produce hydrochloric acid, which can actually degrade the PET. So sorting is super important, and so is cleaning to remove as much impurity as possible. In this case, that includes both things like that last backwashy sip of soda and other kinds of plastic. That's one major factor in why it's both hard and expensive to recycle bottles into more bottles. But when the plastic isn't good enough for recycling into more bottles, it's still sometimes good enough to spin into fiber for clothing or carpets or whatever else you use fiber for. Which, incidentally, is now called polyester, even though chemically, it hasn't changed. That's right, most polyester and PET plastic are chemically the same thing. The plastic is just ground and shredded and melted until it can be spun into thread and then woven into fabric. This type of recycling is sometimes called downgrading, because once the plastic becomes fabric, it can no longer be recycled again. There is also a form of recycling that changes the chemistry of PET, and is in fact called chemical recycling. It requires putting enough energy into the plastic to break the chemical bonds holding the polymer together, converting PET back into its individual parts. These molecules can be used to remake PET, or even made into different types of plastic, but chemical recycling is really expensive, so we don't do it very much. So that's why bottles become clothes and not new bottles, because making bottles requires super clean plastic, and that's tough to get. But even though going from a plastic bottle to a handbag is technically a downgrade, at least it's much cuter now, right? Right? Before you go, we want to tell you about Reinventors, which is a new show from PBS Digital Studios and KCTS 9 in Seattle that will introduce you to the scientists and tinkerers in the Pacific Northwest on the cutting edge of green technology. They'll try edible plastic, which I have to say is not something we encountered in the production of this video, so you don't have to, and bring you to unexpected places like a garage in Seattle with a nuclear reactor. Check out Reinventors and subscribe to them at the link in the description. Thanks for watching. There's a whole lot more to recycling that we haven't touched on, so leave your questions and discussion in the comments below. And be sure to subscribe, share, and turn on notifications so I continue to get paid so I can buy more trendy, recycled, overpriced thanks to the Feel Good Factor handbags.
Aluminum.
The next problem is aluminium doesn't melt until 660 degrees. The paint and lacquer aren't so lucky. They're instantly vaporized. The clean aluminium chips are ready for the next stage, melting. Two furnaces hit a blistering 730 degrees and handle up to 100 tons of aluminium each. The trouble is, when the aluminium melts, it reacts with air, forming a layer of aluminium oxide that floats on top. This unwanted oxide is known as dross. A brave furnace operator skims it off with a giant steel spatula. And the alloy is ready for the casting area. The only problem is getting there. A river of molten metal flows downhill to a holding furnace that's the size of a double-decker bus. Somehow, they need to pour the liquid metal into a mould. Remarkably, the solution is to tip the entire furnace. and a fountain of deadly metal pours into one of 3 moulds set 10 metres into the ground. Inside, they will be cast into 3 towering blocks of aluminium. After 2.5 hours, they have 3 giant aluminium monoliths, called ingots. Each one is 10 metres long, weighs 27 tonnes, and is made up of 1.5 million recycled cans.
Aluminium or aluminum is not expensive because it's rare. In fact, it's the most common metal in the Earth's crust. It's expensive because it's so hard to extract from the rock around it. 150 years ago, it was more expensive than gold.
Today, demand for aluminium is so high, the ingots don't lie around. Their transformation back into cans starts with a 900-kilometre journey to a rolling mill in Germany. Here, they're heated in another furnace to 525 degrees. This relaxes the bonds between the aluminium atoms, releasing any stresses within the ingot. Then it's passed back and forth through a series of rollers. It's a bit like rolling pastry. Each set of rollers thins out the metal until it's 1/4 millimetre thick and 10,000 metres long. That's 1,000 times its original length. Massive reels of the aluminium arrive back in the UK at Ball Packaging to undergo reconversion into cans, and possibly something a little more out of this world.
We've got 3 basic product categories: beverage packaging, household metal packaging, and we also have an aerospace division. So the interesting thing, of course, is manufacturing beverage cans is rocket science.
The aluminium alloys for rockets are very similar to the ones used for cans. So theoretically, your old can could be on its way to space. Meanwhile, on planet Earth, they feed the sheets of aluminium into a rapid-fire cupping press. This heavyweight knocks out thousands of shallow cups. The secret of turning them into cans is a tight squeeze. Every cup is rammed through a series of rings, each narrower than the last. Forcing the aluminium through the rings squeezes it into a cylinder, and a new can is born.
The very first time anyone put a beverage in an aluminum can, it was beer. It was in the US, and it was 1959. And even back then, they still recycled. You got a cent for every can you brought back.
They produce around 6.5 million cans here every day and send them all over the world. That's a whole lot of aluminium. Luckily, there's plenty more where these came from.
I think it's a good idea because we students have used a lot of tins and bottles, but we always throw it that way. So it's a bit wasteful, and I think if we can give the bottles that we don't use to some people or some organization that are using our trash, so it will be a good effort.
Hello, good morning. I'm student of UPM. So I'm supporting what you all do by providing us in terms of points or gift as encouragement for us also to save the environment. So in tech, we also have some present for us, right? So I think it's a good idea and it's a good initiative from all of you. Okay, so hopefully you can do this like what you have said.
Yeah, hi. For my opinion is this business good for everyone, for students, because it saves our environment. So make our cafe so clear. So I think this is a good business. Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Well, for your recycling system, the program, I think this is such a good thing to operate, because as we can see, every day we have so many trashes, especially for plastic bottles and Pepsi, also all kinds of bottles. We still need to find a way. Anyway, we're going to find a way to solve them. Not only just throw them away into the rubbish, but I think they can be more beneficial. So I think your program, this idea would be a good thing to separate, to spread among the people. But I think there's still a few things you need to focus on. It's like the place you are going to do this. You have to settle it carefully. It must be crowded. Must be crowded, and students are all around here. Maybe like this place. This place should be good. Well, for this one is for the place. Second one is you told me that you are going to sell them to those companies who need this. So you have to make a good contract with them. Just make sure that they are gonna use it in a good way, not just using it as a harmful thing. Yes, that's just briefly. That's all.